This is also a time of change for my family.
The moment Camilla reached the chapel door, the palace air changed. What should have been a quiet royal service became a stunning test of power, loyalty, and humiliation. A senior security officer stepped forward, blocked her path, and delivered the words no one expected. Entry had been refused by direct instruction from Charles's office. For Camilla, the rejection was not just public, it was personal. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Camilla did not move at first. She stared at the officer, as if the sentence had landed in the wrong place, at the wrong time, on the wrong person. The private chapel service, a small religious gathering, inside a royal residence, limited to selected family members and trusted household figures, had been arranged with tight control, because attendance was not only about prayer, it was about standing. It was about who still belonged inside the circle when the doors closed. She had arrived believing her place beside Charles made access beyond question, and that certainty made the refusal cut deeper. The officer held his ground. He did not raise his voice, and that made the moment colder. Camilla asked for the instruction to be repeated, and when the officer repeated it, her face changed. Shock gave way to humiliation. Staff lowered their eyes, not because they had missed what happened, but because they understood it. Charles was not standing at the chapel door, yet his office was there in every word. The king's office, the aides who manage his schedule, instructions, and household decisions, had become the invisible hand, stopping her from crossing the threshold. Camilla looked past the officer, toward the closed chapel entrance, waiting for someone to appear, waiting for the mistake to be corrected. No one came. The officer unfolded an instruction sheet, and the paper itself became a weapon. It proved this was not confusion. It was not a nervous guard misunderstanding protocol. It was prepared, written, carried, and enforced. Camilla had been stopped at the chapel door by security, under direct orders from Charles's bat, and every witness knew the same truth. The rejection had been planned. The silence around Camilla grew heavier. She lowered her hand, but she did not step away. Charles remained absent, and that absence spoke with brutal force. Behind palace walls, hours earlier, someone had decided this moment would happen. Someone had approved the words. Someone had placed the officer at that door. And before Camilla could demand the explanation she deserved, the people closest to Charles had already begun choosing sides. Behind the chapel door stood more than security. There was Charles, distant and unreadable. There was Camilla, wounded by a rejection she never believed would touch her. There was William, watching the monarchy's future tighten around a single decision. And somewhere between them, all stood the palace staff, silent witnesses to a command that carried the force of a royal fracture. Charles had built his life around control, but this control came with a cost. His office, the private team that manages the king's schedule, decisions, messages, and household orders, had become the center of the storm. Private secretaries moved carefully. Security chiefs spoke in clipped phrases. Senior aides avoided loose words, because one wrong sentence could turn refusal into a family war. The king understood why the decision mattered. If Camilla could challenge access in front of staff and still walk through that door, every order looked weak, yet he knew what the order would do to her. Camilla felt the betrayal land deeper than any insult from an enemy. A rival could have wounded her pride, but this came from the office tied to her husband, the place where his authority lived when he was not in the room. She had expected protection. She received distance. Her silence after the refusal was not calm. It was shock, held tightly in place. She kept asking whether Charles had known how the words would sound when spoken at the door. William noticed what others tried not to see. The security team did not hesitate. No officer looked confused. No aide rushed forward with a correction. The prince understood that this had been rehearsed, and that mattered, because royal security, the trained protection team responsible for controlling access and safety around family, does not act on instinct during a sensitive service. It acts on command. William saw the command in their stillness, and he knew the moment would not stay hidden. A senior aide had made the final cut before the service began. Camilla's name was quietly removed from the access list, the official sheet used to decide who may enter a restricted event. That deletion carried enormous weight. It turned marriage into procedure. It turned rank into permission. It turned a queen consort into someone who could be stopped. Charles remained distant. Camilla remained wounded. And William remained watchful, as the palace held its breath. The refusal looked sudden to those at the chapel, but the emotional battle had started long before she reached the steps. To understand why his office would take such a drastic step, the story has to return to the private incident that made this order inevitable. Every royal rupture has a moment people remember later with painful clarity. For this one, it was not a speech, not a public scandal, and not a palace announcement. It was a private conversation after a rehearsal for the chapel service, when Camilla made one sharp remark about who truly belonged inside the royal circle. Charles heard enough. William heard more, and silence became dangerous. Camilla had arrived at that rehearsal, already carrying irritation beneath her calm face. The chapel service, a formal religious gathering held for selected members of the royal household, mattered because it was not simply about prayer. It was about recognition, trust, and closeness to the heart of the family. Days before the service, senior figures had gathered to review seating, timing, and access, and every small placement carried meaning. A chair near the front could signal honor. A name placed lower could signal distance. Camilla understood that language. So did William. So did Charles, even when he said nothing. William watched her reaction tighten when the seating order was read aloud. The prince did not interrupt, but his face hardened when she questioned why certain family members had been placed ahead of her expectations. Camilla tried to frame it as concern for tradition, yet the sting beneath her words was clear. She asked who had decided that some people deserved priority inside the chapel, and the question did not fall softly. It struck the room like a challenge. William heard it as more than complaint. He heard it as a test of who still held influence around the king. Charles stood close enough to hear the edge in her voice from an adjoining room. The king did not enter at once, and that choice mattered. He listened, allowing the silence to reveal what anger often hides. Camilla then made the remark that changed everything. She questioned whether his office had been guided by voices determined to weaken her place. Charles heard enough in that moment. William heard even more, because the remark was not only about seating, it was about power. The documented account, later placed in a private household memo, described the exchange as the trigger that led Charles to ask for the chapel access list to be reviewed without Camilla present. That memo mattered because it turned a tense conversation into a traceable decision. The access list, the official record showing who could enter a restricted royal event, became the quiet battlefield. Charles did not need to shout. He simply asked for the names to be checked again. Camilla left the rehearsal believing she had defended her place. William left, knowing she had crossed a line. Charles remained behind, staring at the list that now carried more than names. By the next morning, the chapel was no longer just a place of worship. It had become the line the king was prepared to defend. And when Camilla finally realized that line had been drawn against her, the confrontation could no longer be avoided. Camilla did not step back at first. She looked at the officer, then toward the chapel door, as if waiting for someone inside to correct the mistake. But no one came. Her voice lowered. Her hand tightened around her gloves. The security officer repeated the instruction, and in that second, the refusal stopped being procedure. It became confrontation. Camilla forced herself to stay still, but the wound was already showing. The chapel entrance, the guarded doorway into a private royal service, had been placed under the control of a small security team before she arrived. And that mattered, because no one at such a gathering moved by chance. Every post, every pause, every checked name had been approved. The security officer did not behave like a man facing surprise. He behaved like a man carrying out an order he had practiced. Near him, a senior aide stood close enough to intervene, close enough to soften the blow, but the aide remained silent. That silence told Camilla the decision had palace backing. The queen consort asked one question, and it cut through the stillness. Did Charles personally approve this? The officer did not look away, but he did not give her the answer she wanted. He only referred back to the written instruction. Charles's office, he said, had issued the restriction, and it applied specifically to her chapel access. Those words mattered, because access was never only about a room. It was about standing beside the king, about being seen as part of the protected center, about knowing that when a door opened for the family, it opened for her too. Now that belief was being taken apart in front of staff. William arrived nearby before the moment could be buried. The prince saw Camilla's anger harden into disbelief, and he understood immediately that this was no ordinary delay. He looked at the officer, then at the aide, and the lack of panic told him everything. No one rushed to explain. No one whispered that a mistake had been made. William did not overrule the command, and his restraint made the moment sharper. By doing nothing, he allowed the order to stand. A chair inside the chapel was quietly removed before the doors closed. That small act carried brutal meaning. The seat had not been left empty for mercy or confusion. It had been taken away because her absence had already been built into the service. Camilla saw the door close, and the finality of it struck harder than the officer's words. The confrontation had ended without shouting, yet it left a mark, louder than any public argument. Camilla turned away from the chapel door, but her face had changed. She had been refused entry, denied reassurance, and left to carry the shame alone. The real shock, however, had not reached her yet, because the refusal was not only enforced by security, it had been shaped by the hidden machinery of royal power. Power inside the palace rarely announces itself with raised voices. It moves through files, access lists, whispered approvals, and signatures placed at the bottom of carefully worded instructions. Charles sat with the chapel briefing before him, his face unreadable as a private secretary waited for the answer. One decision would protect order. One decision would wound Camilla. He chose order. Charles looked down at the briefing again, and the words seemed heavier the second time. His office controlled chapel access through protocol, security approval, and final household instruction. Protocol means the set of palace rules that decides who may attend, where they stand, and how sensitive royal moments are protected. That mattered because this service was not an ordinary family gathering. It involved trust, discipline, and the image of a monarchy trying to appear steady while pressure grew behind closed doors. If Camilla entered angry, if she challenged the seating again, if she turned a sacred moment into a contest of rank, the damage would not stay private. The king rubbed his hand across the edge of the page, exhausted by the choice in front of him. He knew Camilla would not read the order as a calm security measure. She would feel it as rejection. She would hear it as betrayal. And that knowledge hurt him, because the woman being kept outside the chapel was also the woman who expected him to shield her from humiliation. Yet Charles also knew that royal order depends on obedience at the exact moments when emotion tries to break it. If one person could bend the rule by force of title, the whole structure weakened. A senior private secretary hesitated before asking the question no one wanted spoken. Should the instruction name Camilla directly? The private secretary, a senior aide trusted to prepare official wording for the king, understood the danger of that sentence. Naming her made the order clear, but it also made it personal. Charles did not write the instruction himself. He did not lift the pen and form the words, but he allowed his office to issue it, and he did not reverse it. In palace language, silence can carry the weight of command. Charles listened as the final wording was read back to him. Chapel entry was to be restricted. No exception was to be made at the door. The language was clean, cold, and impossible to misunderstand. It protected the service, but it also placed Camilla outside the circle she believed was hers by right. The king closed the file without celebration. He had preserved order, but he had wounded his own household to do it. The instruction left the office quietly, yet nothing about it would remain quiet for long. Once the paper reached security, once the access list changed, once Camilla faced that chapel door, the decision could no longer be buried. And as the chapel doors closed without her, the fallout began moving through the household faster than anyone could contain. The loudest part of the scandal was not the refusal. It was the silence afterward. Camilla stood away from the chapel entrance, no longer arguing, no longer asking for someone to fetch Charles. Her face had changed. Anger remained, but beneath it was something more painful. The realization that the palace had prepared for her exclusion before she even arrived. Camilla sat alone in a side room and removed her gloves with slow, careful movements. The private chapel service, a closed royal religious gathering, meant only for approved family, members and household figures, continued inside as though nothing had happened, but her absence had already become its own message. That mattered, because royal services are not just moments of faith, they are moments of unity. And when someone so close to the king is missing, the silence around that absence becomes impossible to explain. Staff inside kept their faces still. No one paused. No one asked aloud where she had gone. That restraint made the wound deeper. Charles remained inside the service, visibly composed, but emotionally far from the storm gathering outside. The king understood that leaving his place would turn the refusal into an open crisis. He also understood that staying inside would make Camilla feel abandoned. That was the cruel power of the decision. Protecting order meant allowing pain to sit outside the door. Preserving the service meant letting his wife carry the humiliation alone. He did not move. And because he did not move, everyone else understood the order still stood. Aides moved quickly through the household corridors, trying to contain the damage before whispers became certainty. A palace aide warned William in a low voice that too many staff had seen the refusal for it to vanish. The prince listened without surprise, because he had already seen the steadiness of the security team and the silence of the senior aide at the door. The moment mattered now for a different reason. It was no longer only about whether Camilla could enter a chapel. It was about whether Charles' authority could survive the public meaning of keeping her out. Camilla asked for a direct conversation with Charles as soon as the service ended. Her request carried anger, but beneath it sat something more fragile. She wanted to hear from the king himself that he had not meant to shame her. She wanted one sentence that could soften the blow. Instead, the request was delayed. No aid explained enough. No message arrived quickly enough. The delay hurt more than the door, because it forced her to face the possibility that Charles was not coming to defend her. Camilla waited, and the waiting changed everything. Charles stayed behind the wall of duty. William watched the household adjust around the new reality. The palace tried to control the scandal, but the emotional damage had already escaped control. But when Charles and Camilla finally met, without aides, titles, or ceremony between them, the entire meaning of the refusal changed. When Charles entered the private room, Camilla did not stand immediately. For the first time that day, there were no officers, no aides, no chapel doors, and no official language to hide behind. Only two people remained: a king who had allowed the order to stand, and a wife who had been forced to feel the full weight of it. Camilla looked at him, as if she were trying to find the husband beneath the crown. The meeting took place after the service, away from staff, and without a private secretary present. A private secretary is a senior aide who manages the king's official decisions, messages, and sensitive household matters, and the absence of that figure mattered, because there was no one left to soften the words. Charles knew the refusal had damaged more than chapel protocol. Protocol means the formal rules that guide royal access, order, and behavior, but this had gone far beyond rules. It had struck at Camilla's place beside him. Charles remained standing for a moment before he spoke, and that hesitation told her enough. Camilla asked whether he had wanted her kept out. She did not ask loudly. She did not need to. The question carried the weight of the chapel door. The officers repeated instruction, and the chair quietly removed before the service began. The king paused long enough for silence to answer first. Then he said the service could not become another battleground. Camilla heard judgment in that sentence. She heard accusation. She heard the palace choosing peace over her pride. Camilla felt the meaning settle slowly. Charles admitted the order had come through his office because he believed the service needed protection from private conflict. That admission mattered because it removed the last possible comfort. It was not a mistake. It was not an aid going too far. It was a decision he had allowed because he feared what open tension would do to the monarchy at a sacred moment. The king spoke with restraint, but restraint did not make the truth gentler. He had protected the chapel by leaving her outside it. Camilla lowered her eyes, and for once, anger did not come first. Understanding did. The refusal was not temporary punishment. It was a warning. Her influence now had limits, and those limits could be enforced even when she stood closest to the crown. Charles had not shouted. He had not accused. Yet he had shown her where power ended. The room held the damage between them. Camilla understood the boundary, and Charles understood that she understood. That private admission became the turning point, because once the queen consort knew the line had been drawn, the palace prepared for the world to learn it too. And by morning, what began at a chapel door had escaped the palace walls and become a national symbol. The next morning, Britain did not wake to a formal palace announcement. It woke to an image. Camilla, outside a chapel door, her face tight with disbelief as security stood between her and the royal service inside. The moment appeared on front pages, morning broadcasts, and phone screens across the country. Suddenly, the private refusal had become a public verdict. Charles watched the coverage in silence, and every second made the decision feel heavier. Palace officials prepared a restrained response, insisting chapel access had followed internal protocol. Protocol means the palace rules that guide who may enter private royal spaces, who gives approval, and how sensitive events are protected. That explanation mattered because it gave the monarchy a shield. It made the refusal sound calm, orderly, and necessary. But the public understood something sharper. Camilla had not been delayed by confusion. She had been personally turned away, and everyone could see the difference. Camilla saw the front page and pushed it aside. The headline screamed "Shut out" above the chapel door, framing her refusal as a royal rupture rather than a private restriction. She had lived through judgment before, but this was different, because the wound had come from inside the palace and then been handed to the world. The queen consort had entered the morning, not as a wife seeking answers, but as a symbol of power, checked at the threshold. Her humiliation had become a national story before she could even control her own pain. Charles heard a morning broadcaster call the image the clearest sign yet that palace power has shifted behind closed doors, and the words settled over him like a sentence. The king knew the broadcasters, and's framing mattered, because public language can harden private choices into history. Once people believed the chapel door showed a change in palace power, no careful statement could fully erase it. He had wanted to protect the service from conflict. Now the service had become proof of conflict. Camilla remained still, as aides brought softer explanations, but none of them softened the truth. The palace response sounded clean, but the image looked brutal. She had been refused entry, while security stood firm, and the country had seen a queen consort, stopped by the very system she believed would protect her. That contrast made the story impossible to dismiss. Charles understood the world was now judging what the family had already felt. Camilla understood that sympathy did not restore authority. The palace understood that silence had failed. Yet the most important reaction was not outside the gates, on broadcasts, or across front pages. It was inside the royal household, where the family began accepting what the king had silently declared. By the time the public argument faded, the monarchy had already reached its private conclusion. In the end, the chapel door was never just a door. It became the line between loyalty and control, between marriage and monarchy, between personal pride and institutional survival. Camilla, Werthoil's refusal exposed what everyone inside the palace already knew, but had not dared to say aloud. Charles would protect the crown even when the cost fell inside his own marriage. Camilla carried that knowledge with a quiet pain no palace statement could soften. The monarchy treated the chapel refusal as a defining internal correction, not a passing misunderstanding. An internal correction means a private royal decision meant to restore order before a problem becomes larger. And this one mattered because it showed that even the closest figures could be checked when discipline broke down. Charles's office remained firm afterward, and that firmness proved the decision had been accepted at the highest level. No apology reversed it. No aide quietly blamed confusion. No soft explanation returned her lost authority. Charles carried sadness too, but he did not undo what had been done. The king knew reversing the order would have made the chapel door look like a mistake, and worse, it would have made his authority look uncertain. That was the cruel bargain. He could comfort Camilla and weaken the command, or he could protect the crown and leave the wound open. He chose the crown. The choice hurt him, but royal duty often demands a calm face, while something personal breaks underneath. Charles understood that cost, and Camilla understood she had been made to feel it. William saw the deeper meaning with painful clarity. The prince understood that palace access, influence, and privilege would no longer be measured only by closeness to Charles. They would be measured by discipline. That mattered, because the future of the monarchy depended on rules being stronger than personal pressure. William did not celebrate Camilla's humiliation, but he recognized the warning inside it. The family quietly adjusted around the new reality, and the silence that followed became almost as powerful as the order itself. Camilla was left with a truth she could not ignore. Her place beside Charles still carried rank, attention, and history, but it did not make her untouchable. The chapel refusal marked a decisive emotional shift. She had not merely been kept from a royal service. She had been shown the boundary of her power. Charles had shown the monarchy that duty would come before personal rescue. This was the moment the palace stopped hiding every wound from view and allowed one closed door to speak for the crown itself. For Camilla, it was humiliation. For Charles, it was sacrifice. For William, it was confirmation. And for the monarchy, it was the final proof that survival would always demand order, even when order came at the price of love. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.